My fault about that, guys. My fault. It stopped early. Yeah, sometimes Streamlabs be acting up. So we're gonna jump right into the news. Welcome to the live stream. Shout out to you guys. Happy Friday. Shout out to all the subs, supporters, first timers. Don't disrespect my subs. Don't disrespect my supporters. And yeah, we'll be all good. So you guys enjoy the Friday night recap, and I'll see you guys in a few.
It's simple. When we breathe better, life is better.
We're going to unpack what those moments was found brutally killed in her own home, allegedly at the hands of the man that she had been with for years. Somebody that her family had welcomed into holidays, someone that they seemingly trusted. According to police, her boyfriend, 47-year-old Jeffrey Real, called 911 before dawn, claiming not only that he killed Paxton, but that he did it because she was, quote, possessed. And at the center of it all is the most haunting question that this case raises, one that goes far beyond the word possessed. What was really happening behind closed doors in the months, maybe even the years, leading up to that night? So here's the case. Paxton Wallace was living in Phoenix. According to her family, she was this warm, steady presence in their lives, somebody who loved her faith, loved her two dogs, always made time for Sunday breakfast with the people that she was close to. But she had been in a long-term relationship with a man named Jeffrey Real, someone her family says that they genuinely thought that they knew. According to statements that they made to AZ family, they'd spend holidays with him, they opened their home to him, they had all of this time, these memories with this guy. And while there were things in his past that certainly raised questions later, and we're going to get into that part separately because there's a lot there, the family says nothing had ever screamed danger to them. Not in a way that would make someone believe something like this could ever happen. From the outside, nothing leading up to Paxton's death publicly signaled what was about to come. But looking back, the family now says there are elements of this relationship that maybe deserve a closer look, and we're going to unpack what those moments are. But then you go to the morning of November 7th. It's a Friday, and everything shatters. Everything changes. According to a release from the Phoenix Police Department, at around 3:40 a.m., police claim they get a call from Jeffrey Real himself. And he reportedly tells the dispatcher that he has killed Paxton, and then adds a claim that sends this entire case into this unsettling, almost unreal direction. He allegedly said he did it because she was, quote, possessed. So when officers arrive at the house, they walk into this scene that is chaotic and horrific. According to court records that were reviewed by AZ family, Jeffrey Real is still there. He's holding a hammer and a cross. Inside the home, police find Paxton dead. And this is the part that is especially unsettling, is how severe her injuries were. So severe that she's unrecognizable. That's based on the reports. There is a chainsaw in the kitchen, and this chainsaw was reportedly covered in blood, hair, and biological matter. So this guy, Real, was detained. He was taken to a hospital first. He was later booked into jail. He's charged with first-degree murder. He's being held on a $1 million bond. And we'll talk about his criminal case. Innocent until proven guilty, absolutely. What is the evidence against him? We'll talk about it. But meanwhile, Paxton's family, from a human point of view, who had been preparing for Thanksgiving, which they say was Paxton's favorite holiday, they suddenly find themselves planning her funeral instead. All right, so before we go any deeper into this case, I wanted to bring in somebody who can actually walk us through what all of this means from a legal, from an investigative standpoint, because there's a lot to unpack here. I want to bring him back in, criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we even get into this case specifically, can you explain how, someone who's been on both sides, right, the prosecution and defense, you tend to look at a case like this when you're first hearing it, because it's hard to separate it. There's the human aspect from it. There's the brutal nature of it. You have a defendant, yes, who's innocent until proven guilty. But, how do you first approach something like this?
Oh, gosh. Well, certainly some chilling allegations here in this case, Jesse. I mean, from a prosecutor's standpoint, one of the first points of contact is the victim's family. You're going to learn not only how this affected them, but possibly the history of this relationship. On the defense side, you kind of have to try to have a detached, objective legal analysis. You have to explore what avenues you might be able to pursue, notwithstanding the gruesome nature of the alleged facts.
And with your background in special victims and domestic violence cases, is this something, the allegations right now, is this something that stands out to you as an outlier, or have you seen, brutal crime scenes like this before? And again, we'll talk about what potential defenses could be.
Jesse, unfortunately, in my experience, it is common that domestic violence relationships, more so than almost any other relationship, has the potential for lethality. And sometimes it escalates into, a gruesome set of circumstances like we have here. It's really, unfortunately, a pattern that can sometimes repeat in communities, and it is not terribly well addressed by the legal system, and sort of has an upward trend recently, which is alarming.
And one of the aspects of this case that makes it particularly chilling is if the allegations are true and he did this, the family's shocked. There is this sense that we knew this guy for years. We had no idea that someone like this would be capable of it. Again, assuming that he did this, right? That is something I think I've seen in a lot of cases before, like whether it's a domestic violence case or a murder case or what have you. But domestic violence cases particularly, you have this idea where there's maybe an image that the public sees, that the family sees, that the friend sees, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors or who somebody really is.
Oh, exactly. And that's why these things can be so shocking. They can be so shocking for the victims' families. Domestic violence, like you said, it's not something that often happens out in the open. It doesn't happen in front of a ton of witnesses, typically. It's often behind closed doors. It is a private hell that some of these survivors and unfortunately alleged victims have to experience, sometimes for years, without even their closest family or friends becoming aware of it. It's just a very private and sensitive matter, and people are sometimes disinclined to speak out about it as well.
Can I talk to you about this 911 phone call? Because it's strange on a number of levels, but to have a suspect allegedly confess over the phone in the middle of the night, right, in the early morning hours, is that common in homicide cases?
That one, at least in my experience, is not terribly common. Oftentimes the 911 call comes from the alleged victim, the person who is on the receiving end of an assault or threats or something worse. Here the alleged culprit, where the perpetrator is expressing what he's doing and why he's doing it, I think is really illustrative. It does rise to the level of alleged confession, certainly problematic for the defense.
Now, we have to talk about him allegedly saying that he did this because she was possessed. My first thought is, okay, we're talking about Arizona insanity defense, right? Where a person could be found guilty except insane if at the time of the criminal act that person had a mental disease or defect, that they didn't know the criminal act was wrong. So first, if it's a law school example, you say, oh my gosh, they killed somebody thinking they're possessed, thinking, they must not be in their right mind. But to call 911, that would signify to you, right? They knew what they did was against the law. They knew what they did was wrong. Or am I not thinking about it the right way? Or is a criminal defense attorney going to jump on this?
No, I hear you totally. I mean, that call kind of shows a consciousness of guilt. Why would you get police involved if you didn't do anything wrong, if you were kind of saving this person from demonic possession? The call to police indicates that he appraised the wrongfulness of the conduct. And then you look at these sort of multiple weapons that are found at the scene. There are other artifacts like a cross, and those things, the hammer, the chainsaw, all of these things together show that there was some thought put into this. There was some planning put into this, and that cuts against an argument that the defendant was not guilty by reason of insanity.
How do they test for that? How do they know? It's not right. It's not a criminal defendant at this point in time whether they're insane. It was at the moment. How do they know at the moment whether somebody was afflicted with some sort of mental disease or defect that they couldn't appreciate the wrongfulness of their actions? Is it a battle between different mental health experts? Is it trying to understand what officers observed at that moment? How long can that mental disease defect, that mental affliction, be processed for? Again, what is the test?
Yeah, so typically how it works, Jesse, is the defense, if they're exploring that not guilty by reason of insanity defense, they will have a comprehensive mental health evaluation for their client with a professional who is trained in doing this type of analysis. The professional usually does an in-depth interview with the defendant, asks about what happened that day, what happened in the days and weeks leading up to this. They look at evidence at the scene. They try to determine if there is some disconnect between what the defendant is saying and what the objective reality is. On top of that, they have to find a mental disease or defect. It can't just be, I was having a bad day or I had a kind of a panicky break or something like that. It's usually got to be more severe than that. And then the prosecution would get a chance to do an evaluation, the findings of which often differ from the defense's evaluation.
Were you surprised that he was immediately hit with the first-degree murder charge? I mean, from your background, what would be factors that would lead authorities, prosecutors to immediately go forward with that charge? Because, I mean, I'm covering other cases where you don't see that immediately. It takes some time to figure out what had happened. First-degree murder, what does that tell you?
One thing it tells me is the prosecution is taking this extraordinarily seriously, and that they think even at this early stage, they have the ammunition to bring the most serious homicide charge there is, first-degree murder. One potential issue is that they're going to have to prove premeditation. They're going to have to prove that he did this after deliberation. And while there is some evidence of planning, I think defense might argue that, hey, this was like a psychotic.
If you like to eat healthy and save money, let me put you on these beef sticks. This is the Paleo Valley 100% grass-fed beef sticks.
Break that happened in the spur of the moment for which there was no history leading up, as the family has said. And so proving the first-degree murder charge, premeditation and after deliberation, is going to be a hurdle.
I'd say, other than the brutal nature of this, one of the hardest parts of this story, one of the hardest pieces of this story to understand, to grasp, and something that only really emerged after Paxton's death, is, again, what her family now believes she may have been going through in the weeks, the months leading up to all this. Because in the immediate aftermath of her death, her sister Alita and her Aunt Tiffany, they both spoke to AZ family about how Paxton had actually been seemingly trying to get out of this relationship. Her Aunt Tiffany told the outlet, quote, she was trying to get out. She was trying to reach out for help. There are shelters, there are places, but there's a wait list. There's a lottery. It's a hope you get in. According to the New York Post, Alita said that Paxton, quote, was trying to get out of the relationship, but was concerned that she was actually suffering in silence. She was not letting her family know what was really going on. And they didn't really get into too deep of specifics, but the way that they described it suggests that she may have been looking to get help quietly, maybe even cautiously, the way a lot of people in difficult relationships do. Eric, is that true? Is there difficulty for people to get the help that they need to get out of a potentially abusive relationship or dangerous relationship?
Jesse, I've seen it time and again, sadly, how difficult it can be for some of these folks to leave these abusive relationships. On the one hand, they often fear their abuser and what could happen if they try to leave and aren't successful. In addition to that, often there's a cycle of domestic violence whereby the abuser perpetrates, but then soothes and consoles, and then the cycle starts all over again. On top of that, sometimes there are economic impediments. Dependency can rear its ugly head in these kinds of things. So a number of reasons why it's so difficult for these folks to get out of these relationships, even when they want to.
And the invisible part of it, right? So her sister told AZ family, quote, no one wants to say that someone who said they love them is hurting them. That's a real statement. Now, from a legal point of view, Eric, it's not evidence from investigators per se. It's not something documented by police, but this is the family's apparent understanding of what might have been happening behind closed doors. Is this a piece of evidence that would come into a trial? Would they testify about this? Is it too speculative? How important is it as part of the investigation?
Well, hey, the family can testify as to their observations of the nature of the relationship, how the relationship may have changed over time, that kind of thing. And in the domestic violence context, as a prosecutor, you are always deeply investigating, were there prior acts? Was there abuse in the past? Did it escalate over time? Because that's often how these domestic violence cases play out. And if there are prior incidents, prior calls to police, prior calls for help, prior observations of bruises or PTSD-like syndromes, all of those things are potentially on the table when we get to the jury trial phase.
And going back to something, well, is this a kind of case, and these are based on their statements, their recollections, their understanding of what was going on. But is this a kind of case where there's so much attention that they look now into this idea of the shelters, the lottery system? I mean, are they investigated? Is it true that there's a wait list? Is this something that would be explored?
It should be. It darn right should be. In Colorado, where I practice, there are a number of resources for folks who are experiencing this. And sometimes it is difficult to get a bed in these places. Sometimes there are just limited opportunities in that sense. And so I think it's important to look at, hey, are we giving our communities the tools that they need to protect themselves, to get out of these relationships safely so that someone doesn't get stuck and God forbid something like this allegedly happens?
I got to get into the criminal history because that's another piece of the story that apparently didn't come out until after Paxton's death. It's something her family says they actually did know about, at least in broad strokes. We're going to get a little bit more granular here because they knew that Jeffrey Real had a criminal history. They just didn't think that it would ever come to something like this. But when you actually lay out what the record is, and we don't really know if they knew the specifics of what his record was, you start to see a pattern here, okay? Because according to court records, the apparent earliest major case goes all the way back to 2012 in Maricopa County, Arizona. And this wasn't something small or vague. The charges on the record were for aggravated assault, multiple counts. Now, one of those counts resulted in a guilty conviction. The others were dismissed seemingly as part of the process. But right away, more than a decade before he met Paxton, he already had a violent felony on his record. You fast forward 10 years, 2022. He ends up facing another criminal case in Arizona, again, a multi-count complaint. The problem with this is the details of the charges. Oddly, they're not actually listed in the docket, but what we do know is that one of those counts did end in a guilty conviction in January of 2023. The others were dismissed. Eric, when you look at something like that, A, how does that factor into the current case? Okay. And B, how much does that matter when evaluating risk in a new relationship? So you're talking about two things here, right? You're talking about A, how does that factor legally into the case? And B, as someone who has experience in this, is this something you've seen? Does it factor into evaluating risk in a new relationship?
Sure. So what appears clear from the record is that this defendant had a history of violence. This was in his past. He has gotten physical before. And so, especially from a prosecutor's standpoint, that's aggravating, right? It's not something that just came out of nowhere, some kind of fluke when this guy was 47 years old. It's something that has been apparently in his past before. And so that may cause prosecutors to take an even more serious approach to the case. In terms of approaching a relationship, gosh, oftentimes these folks might not be privy to that information. It's not always easy to find, criminal history of a person from 2012 unless you're kind of in the business of doing that. And so when you have an unwitting young woman who simply is, looking for love, that might not be front of mind. She might not even have access to that information.
Made right here in America with proprietary fabrics 10 times more abrasion resistant than 100% cotton.
This would come out in his trial if he A, is found guilty and during sentencing, I'd imagine, or B, if he were to take the stand, couldn't he be confronted about his prior criminal history?
There are a number of ways it could potentially come in. So if the prior act was so similar in nature, for example, if it was also domestic violence, if he also used a weapon, if it is similar enough, the prosecutor could try to get it in as a prior act in the trial itself. However, I think that's somewhat unlikely. If he testifies and he tries to say something like, I'm a peaceful guy, I wouldn't do this is out of character for me, or something like that, they would say, well, wait a sec. What about in 2012? Look at this court record we have here, aggravated assault felony, man.
All right, guys, we're going to switch over to Candace Owens real quick. We got Pastor Mark Driscoll, talking about the fact that Candace Owens is losing touch with reality. A lot of people are actually saying that Candace Owens is losing touch with reality. I like to say when she's passionate about something, we should pay attention to her. But let's take a look at what Mark Driscoll has to say, because he's posing it in a way where he's worried about her. And most people are saying this, But let's just hear what Candace has to say.
Encourage you to just ask the question, if you are an Ahab, you're increasing the odds of being married to a Jezebel, which is a domineering, controlling, unwell woman who likes power and attention. I would encourage you to just ask the question, if in this strange triangle, if Charlie wasn't Elijah and you're not Ahab and she's not Jezebel. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm not saying that's what it's not. I'm just saying that would be a fun Bible study for date night at your cul-de-sac house with all the cats.
And speaking of people with crazy ideas and ideologies that tear down other people, let's roll this clip.
I just really needed to just take a breather and really process everything that happened with Charlie and what it kind of means in terms of where we are. And I think it is a circumstance where we just know. We just know that he was truly betrayed in one of the most egregious ways that I think I've ever seen. It has made me lose faith in politics. It has made me fully lose faith in Trump. And my heart aches for the fact that he gave so much of his life to Trump and to politics. And they just were like, nope, that is it. And it serves us or it doesn't serve us and we want to move on. And so here's a holiday. Bro, if they try to give me a holiday, what is with them giving people a holiday after they kill them? Why is that a thing? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Martin Luther King, what about this holiday? What about this boulevard? Anyways, let me knock off. Like, they're going to get Charlie Kirk a boulevard. They already did. They did in Israel. They gave him freaking bullet. It's like, as soon as they give you a boulevard and a holiday, they definitely killed you. Okay, there's no question. They killed you. There's no way. That's like their signature thing. It's like that's what they do. It's the Fed signature. It's how they sign off after they murder you. So like holiday and a boulevard. And it's never on a nice side of town either. Like Charlie Kirk Boulevard is not going to be a nice side of town. Anyways, I will be back on the 27th, you guys. Thank you guys for all the support throughout these couple of weeks. These last
I can't wait to see her today back up saying just very encouraging things.
So let me take a very different angle on this. I don't know Candace. Never met her. So let me take a very weird angle on this. A pastoral angle. This is my 30th year as a senior pastor. What's happening here is a very public example of a very common crisis. Mm-hmm. The wife is unwell. Mm-hmm. The wife decides that she's going to live her unwell life online. Yep. And now any sense of privacy for the marriage and the family it's eradicated.
At Clean Choice, we're not just about generating electricity on our solar farms.
Is there a point where in any marriage, the husband should say, babe, we got to talk about your social media?
Mm-hmm. If my wife was obsessed with another man, a married man, and kept talking about him online, I'd probably have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
If my wife's talking about any other man, it just starts getting weird.
When
having dreams about him, thinking about why they died, kind of obsessing over them.
I'm saying I'm his best friend. It's like, well, actually, your best friend is your wife. My best friend is my wife. And if you or I had a best friend that was a woman other than our wife, that would be bad, not good. Not good. Not good. And so how many guys are even watching this and they're like, what my wife posts on social media, I'm not comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Maybe, it's photos of her, looking like, Gym Day and Hot Mom or whatever. You're like, I don't like that being out there. Or she's, posting private details of our life. Or she's taking away the privacy of our children and making them part of her reality television show for her Instagram influencer mom life. Maybe as well, when we have a disagreement or a problem, she's venting and complaining and bringing our private matters public through social media. Maybe she's in arguments with people that aren't healthy or good. Maybe she's triangulating with really unwell people, whatever it is. There is a large number of men who look at their wife's social media and just shake their head and go, this isn't good. Mm-hmm. And this isn't well. Mm-hmm. There are other guys, they're watching their wives online manifest the beginning of mental health.
Yeah.
Like saying and doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Britney Spears is doing online today, but it would be better if she was offline. Mm-hmm. So the way that social media works, and I didn't know, it kind of here's where my mind is going. So some years ago, I had a discussion with Dr. Drew Pinsky. He hosted the Dr. Drew show. Yep. He's like a celebrity psychologist. And I got to co-host Loveline with him one time, which was weird, taking sex calls with him. But he wrote a book called The Mirror Effect. Mm-hmm. And The Mirror Effect, it gave kind of the clinical categories for social media a long time ago. And he says that celebrities model behavior and then people mirror it. Mm-hmm. And so that's how you get a following. That's how you get a platform. These are your influencers. The problem is once you say or do something crazy and then everyone is saying or doing that crazy thing, it's not crazy anymore. Mm-hmm. So then you got to get something new and you got to get crazier.
Yep.
And if you're asking at the end of the crazy cul-de-sac, who's the cat lady that lives at the end of the crazy cul-de-sac? Shazam.
Shazam. She's doing a good job being crazier and crazier.
Well, but then her team will tell her, you're crushing it online. Viewership is up. The numbers are at an all-time high. Yes, because people are fascinated with watching celebrities self-destruct publicly. Mm-hmm. It's why the reality television show genre keeps living. It's like, oh, these people are nuts. Like, I want to see the car roll over in the intersection and the blazing inferno.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're not watching because you're influencing them, you're entertaining them.
Yeah. 100%. So what would you tell, so let me say this very slowly. Candace Owens' husband, whose name is George Farmer, what advice would you have for him in this time?
Earnestly, as a pastor, just as a pastor, like if the door was shut and we weren't live streaming it, I'd be like, number one, do you know Ahab in the Bible? Ahab was a passive man. And if you are an Ahab, you're increasing the odds of being married to a Jezebel, which is a domineering, controlling, unwell woman who likes power and attention. Mm-hmm. So my first thing would be, hey, I wrote a book called New Days, Old Demons. And I would encourage you to just ask the question, if in this strange triangle, if Charlie wasn't Elijah and you're not Ahab and she's not Jezebel. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm not saying that's what it's not. I'm just saying that would be a fun Bible study for date night at your cul-de-sac house with all the cats. That would just be something I would throw out there. And just consider as you study that if this dynamic is not replaying itself. Mm. In addition, I would say, are you watching, viewing, following her social media? And how do you feel about that as her husband? Mm-hmm. And if he said, it bothers me that she seems infatuated with another man. Mm-hmm. I'd say, I would go with that.
I would for sure go with
that. Yeah, I would pull that thread.
The first red flag's the different last names.
Yeah. And it's like, well, she's literally having dreams about it. How do you feel about it? And if she is having dreams about him, do you think that maybe you should go get her an evaluation? Like, are we dealing with somebody who they've disconnected from reality? Is this where the professionals need to just ask, hey, are we doing okay here?
Yeah. I mean, if my wife came to me and said a man appeared to her in her dreams and talked to her, I'd be like, all right, let's go talk to a different man in a white coat.
Yeah, let's go check that out. And even if the information you're getting is accurate, doesn't mean it's not demonic. Uh-huh. And so, I mean, my first recommendation would be to the husband is like, take a break. Get offline.
Yeah.
And at some point, I'll just say this to everybody. If you don't get offline and just go live like a human being, you get a little crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, the most important thing you can do sometimes is turn your phone off and go for a walk. Go up to the mountains and have a hike. Have some kids and grandkids and play with them. Go serve somebody who's suffering and hurting. You can get so conspiratorial in your mindset if you only live online. And then there's something about somebody's got cancer and you're serving them. Now you're dealing with reality. So like for me, so yesterday, the grandkids came over. We just talking about like, I don't know what's going on the internet because I'm playing with the grandkids.
Yeah.
And I know that playing with the grandkids is incredibly good for my soul.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what people are saying online. I just know that, well, yesterday I got to introduce your son and his cousin to Legos. And this was fascinating for them. They got to start building things and building cars, and now we're building garages. And honestly, doing normal things, being a normal person, living in the normal world, and removing yourself from the internet and attention, it is the only way to be a sustainably sane, well human being.
For sure. It's really interesting. So George is not on social media at all.
He's probably the healthy one.
And they have 4 kids.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying. I'm finding out if he has a current job. He might be.
I mean, yeah, if you got 4 kids, like, go fill the sippy cup, read the kids' Bible. You know, I mean.
He hasn't had a job in 3 years. They have 4 kids since 2019. So.
Okay. I would tell you what I think, but it's a new show.
I know.
And I'd like to have another episode at some point. But if I was a pastor, I would just look at the whole family system and dynamic and be like, is this well? Like, is he the protector, provider, leader, and head? Are they agreeing on their public and private life? Are their priorities God, marriage, children? What is the environment in the home?
Yeah.
How are the children doing? I mean, literally, I would be doing a pastoral evaluation of whether or not this marriage and family was doing well. And that's not to be, pejorative or critical. That's just caring about people.
Yep.
It's one thing to just, take shots and criticize. It's a whole nother to be like, this is a marriage and a family and a person.
Yep.
And if they're not doing well, do we just keep watching because it's breathtaking, or do we help because this isn't going to end well?
Yeah. Thank you for your insight. I think you kicked the hornet's nest, so this one will be fun online.
Well, at least, that's what us Islamophobes do in our free time.
I love it. I can't wait to see the YouTube thumbnail on this one.
Yeah.
All right, on to our mailbag. This is where we're going to wrap the show. We have a couple questions. If you guys have a question, feel free to comment it below, and hopefully we'll get to it next week. But last week we got some questions. I go to a mega church, and they are getting more woke. What should I do?
Well, first you got to define. So this is a hard thing. Like, there's soft woke and there's hard woke. Hard woke is rainbow flag, transgender bishop, Black Lives Matter support. That's just, praying with, Unitarians. That's just, then soft woke is they don't say anything about anything.
All right, shout out to Pastor Mark Driscoll. Just out of respect, I say shout out to Pastor Mark Driscoll. I was thinking it's so hilarious. His co-host clearly knows nothing. His co-host doesn't know who Candace Owens' husband is at all. He's saying, I wonder what kind of job he has. And I'm thinking to myself, George Farmer, he doesn't need a job. He has more money than you. But if he does a little bit more research, then he'll figure out who Candace Owens' husband really is. But George Farmer does work, but he also has a very good net worth. And obviously, Pastor Mark Driscoll's co-host knows nothing about that. All right, guys, so we're going to move on to, let me show you guys where we're going next. We got John Fetterman humiliates Sunny Hostin live after she attacks his vote to reopen the government. Guys, don't forget to be praying for Representative John Fetterman. He fell yesterday, I think it was, when he was going for a walk. He made like a lighthearted comment on Truth Social about it. He said, if you thought my face looked bad before, you should see it now. But we should still pray for Senator John Fetterman or Representative John Fetterman, because I like the guy. I think he's a good dude, you know. Pray for him, pray for his family. So here we go. John Fetterman humiliates Sunny Hostin live after she attacks his vote to reopen the government. That's not surprising, though, when it comes to Sunny.
Join us as Food Network revisits.
Whether it's Bernie or the governor in California.
It was a horrific mistake. Governor Gavin Newsom called it pathetic and a surrender. Poll after poll found more Americans on both sides of the aisle blaming Republicans. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene blamed the GOP. As you mentioned, Democrats had big wins last week, so you had momentum. Why give in now? Why bring a butter knife to a gunfight? Are you willing to gamble that the GOP will negotiate on health care in good faith once the government reopens? Because if that gamble is wrong, 500,000 Pennsylvanians that you represent, their health care costs will skyrocket if you are wrong. And I believe you are wrong.
Well, first of all, MTG is quite literally the last person in America that I'm going to take advice or to get their kinds of my leadership and values from. And now, if Democrats are celebrating crazy pants like that, then that's on them. And I don't need a lecture. I don't need a lecture from whether it's Bernie or the governor in California, because they are representing very deep blue kinds of populations, and a lot of those things were part of the extreme. And now remember, what really needs to win, the big win, is involving my state and other states and those things. And why have we arrived here after the election a year ago? We got to forget some of the things that cost us that election. Or now, for me, it's like, that's why I'm trying to remind people that kinds of the extremism, we can't return to those kind of things and realize we need to find a way forward. And I would like to, rather than cite MTG, I'm going to cite one of the new governor-elects saying that my election is not a green light to continue the shutdown, because I promise you, this isn't a political game. It is viewed by many of us, but the reality is 42 million Americans now not sure where their next meal is going to come from, and because we vote like that, or people that haven't been paid for 5 weeks now, and that kinds of chaos. Those workers have to borrow more than $500 million, from their credit union just to pay their bills now. So for me, we're in the middle of this.
Meeting with the Syrian president earlier today, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a big ally of yours, said that she would rather see you focused on nonstop domestic policy meetings here at the White House instead of nonstop foreign policy meetings. What's your response to her saying that, and also saying that grocery prices are up and not down, as you said?
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president. We had a horrible president, and we ended up with Russia-Ukraine, and we ended up with other disasters, too. Don't forget, I put out 8 wars, 9 to come. I think I'll get the other one taken care of, but I put out 8 wars. And look at the damage that Russia-Ukraine has done to us as a country. I mean, we spent $350 billion.
There's virtually no inflation and that grocery prices are going down. Do you agree with him on that?
No, I go to the grocery store myself. Grocery prices remain high. Energy prices are high. My electricity bills are higher here in Washington, D.C. at my apartment, and they're also higher at my house in Rome, Georgia, higher than they were a year ago. So affordability is a problem, and I'm a mom. My kids are 22, 26, and 28. That's the generation I worry about the most, and they're having a very hard time. But when I go back home and I talk to many of my constituents, I'm hearing stories of not only are we having a really hard time affording groceries and rent and things like that, but I'm also hearing stories about people maxing out their credit cards just to afford their monthly expenses.
All right. So we talked about this last week. She's at it again. That was a recent interview she did with Fox. President Trump has finally called her out. Nicole, do you think it's fair that he said something, or is she right?
Well, no, I think it's absolutely fair that he said something, and because it was going to continue to be a talking point if he had not said something. And I think the way he did it was as gracious as possible. That, Margie's off the farm. We don't know what's going on with Margie, but God bless her, right? The truth of the matter is, when you think about incredibly wealthy people, because she's not just a little loaded, she's very loaded. Incredibly wealthy people saying that they're having a hard time financially, it just smacks of this kind of elitism that the Republican Party used to be known for.
It's Bosco's biggest one-day sale this Saturday only. Take an extra 20% off the entire store. Get an extra.
Because Don brings this up again, but he talks about there's been a lot of conversation about the DL man. And I'm not talking about Don Lemon. I'm talking about down low. But we never really talk about the down low politicians out there, like the Mike Johnsons, like the Tim Scotts, like Lady Graham, a.k.a. Lindsey Graham. Don Lemon makes it a point to say he's going to out all these closeted politicians. And hey, I'm here for it. Let's get into the video, y'all. Now, I know this is very petty and very, juvenile, but at the same time, Don Lemon has a point because he's like, y'all pushing all of this legislation against gay people, but really, y'all the secreted, closeted men who like these same people that you're trying to marginalize and diminish. Let's go ahead and get into the video, y'all. Here we go.
And then there's punishment instead of progress. So the same group of people, the same crowd that likes to preach about freedom, they are whispering about bringing back conversion therapy. You hear me? Conversion therapy. You guys know what conversion therapy is, right? It's kind of akin to the pray the gay away, or you can send somebody to a conversion therapy thing and you can just knock the gay right out of them. Which is shocking to me because there's so many closeted people in the Republican Party. Oh my gosh. So many closeted men in the Republican Party. They want to. Do you know how damaging that will be for some kids? And not just some kids, for some families. Conversion therapy. Flirting with overturning same-sex marriage as well. Still obsessed. The people who want government out of their lives are obsessed with controlling other people's love, bedrooms, while lying about their own.
Pay attention.
We see you. We see them. And guess what? If you're a hypocrite, I'm going to out you. The ones who legislate against who they are, I'm looking at you. Allegedly, reportedly, Mike Johnson. I'm looking at you. Allegedly, reportedly, good sources, Benny Johnson. Same holds true for Lindsey Graham. Same alleged for Tim Scott. Same alleged for Lindsey Graham. Tim Scott, they're terrified of mirrors, so they turn their shame into policy. You guys are such hypocrites. That's not morality. That's projection. That's fear. What are you afraid of? Just come out and live your life. You'd be a lot happier. I mean, you wouldn't have to pick up people at parties after you get drunk.
Don's spilling some tea. Listen to what he's saying right now.
That goes for a couple of you that I just mentioned too, who loves asking people if they want to ride home. I'm just saying, people are saying a lot of stuff on the gram. Maybe on Instagram.
Don Lemon. We know Mr. Lemon is very festive. We know Mr. Lemon is very festive. All right, moving on. Trump orders investigation into Epstein's alleged ties to Bill Clinton and banks. ABC News.
Whether you're a professional technician or simply take pride in maintaining your own cars, Harbor Freight
wanting to launch this investigation.
US President Donald Trump intends to order an investigation into pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein's alleged links to major banks and key Democratic figures, including former President Bill Clinton. Our North America correspondent Caitlin Gok has the details from Washington.
After months of sustained pressure from both Republicans and Democrats urging for more information to be released on disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump says he's ordered his Attorney General Pam Bondi to launch this investigation. But it appears that this investigation from the Department of Justice is focused on banks such as JP Morgan and Chase, but then also his perceived enemies, high-profile Democrats such as Larry Summers and Bill Clinton. And in his Truth Social, he has attacked the Democrats, quote, using the Epstein hoax to deflect from the recent government shutdown, and claims it's another scam with all arrows pointing to the Democrats. This appears to be politically motivated as he's trying to shift all the blame on Democrats, and could also be seen as retaliatory given that the House Democrats earlier this week released emails from Jeffrey Epstein that suggested that Donald Trump had greater knowledge of this sex trafficking operation than previously known. In fact, in these emails, it's alleged Mr. Trump, quote, knew about the girls and spent hours at Epstein's house with one of the victims. Now, the White House claims that the Democrats are releasing selective emails to push their narrative. It is no secret that Donald Trump was once friends with Jeffrey Epstein, but Mr. Trump claims that he ended that friendship a long time ago and had no knowledge of this. But nevertheless, the MAGA movement, many people that support Donald Trump voted for him because they thought he would get to the bottom of this issue and reveal who was involved and who knew what. Instead, for months, President Trump has called it a hoax and a scam, and that has outraged many of his supporters. At the beginning of this administration, Attorney General Pam Bondi said that she would release the files and that they were on her desk. Then the Department of Justice reversed course and said that no more documents should be released. This infuriated people, including many Donald Trump supporters that were urging for more transparency. So it is not just Democrats pushing for the release of these documents, despite what President Trump is suggesting. Now, next week, the House of Representatives will vote on a petition that could compel the Department of Justice to release all of the Epstein files. If it passes, it's got to go to the Senate, and then it's got to go to the President's desk, and Donald Trump could veto it. But if he did so, if it got to that point, it would raise questions as to why he wanted to veto this, and would likely outrage more of his supporters. So after months of dismissing this issue or dismissing questions around it, it appears he's taken a different strategy to this, and now he's attacking it and trying to shift the blame on the Democrats, because it's quite clear that this issue is not going away.
A major political battle is erupting in Washington over newly released private emails belonging to the late Jeffrey Epstein. The emails, disclosed by the House Oversight Committee, reveal that Epstein referenced Donald Trump multiple times across a span of 15 years, placing the former political allies back into the spotlight of a scandal that refuses to fade. President Trump, already fending off questions about his past interactions with Epstein, is now forcefully shifting the focus toward his political opponents. In a fiery post on Truth Social, Trump announced he will be asking Attorney General Pam Bondi what these emails actually show and why they could reshape a growing confrontation over who knew what and when. A new batch of emails released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee has once again thrown the late Jeffrey Epstein's network into the spotlight. The documents reveal that Epstein mentioned U.S. President Donald Trump multiple times in private messages, raising fresh questions about their relationship and what Trump may have known. In this video, we break down what the emails reveal, who is involved, and how this release is stirring political controversy in Washington. According to CNN, the emails were exchanged between Epstein, his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of sex trafficking after his death, and the author Michael Wolff. These correspondences, some dating back 15 years, reportedly include Epstein asserting that Trump spent significant time with a woman described by oversight Democrats as a victim of Epstein's sex trafficking. One of the emails goes further. Epstein wrote that Trump knew about the girls, a claim appearing to reference Trump's earlier statement that he banned Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club for allegedly poaching young women who worked there. The emails were made public Wednesday by Oversight Committee Democrats, who obtained them through a subpoena of Epstein's estate earlier this year. The messages largely predate Trump's presidency. Importantly, Trump neither sent nor received any of these emails, and he has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein or Maxwell. In one email dated April 2nd, 2011, independently reviewed by CNN, Epstein told Maxwell, quote, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. am 75% there." Maxwell replied, "I have been thinking about that." The context behind the exchange remains unclear. At the time, Epstein had already served part of his 18-month sentence for soliciting prostitution, including with a minor, a conviction from 2008 that drew criticism years later for being too lenient. He was released after just 13 months in 2009. In a recent interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Maxwell said she never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way and described Trump as a gentleman in all respects. The name of the woman Epstein referenced in his message was redacted by Democrats to protect her identity. Trump's past relationship with Epstein remains under scrutiny as lawmakers push for greater transparency. The controversy reignited earlier this year after the Justice Department reaffirmed its conclusion that Epstein's 2019 prison death was a suicide and said it would not release further information, a decision that sparked outrage among both Democrats and some in Trump's MAGA base. The Oversight Committee's subpoena was part of broader congressional efforts to uncover Epstein's connections. A parallel push to force a full release of government-held files gained new momentum this week, as Representative Adelita Grijalva's swearing-in gave the measure its 218th supporter, just enough to bring it to a floor vote. The newly released trove also includes emails between Epstein and journalist Michael Wolff. In one from January 2019, about 7 months before Epstein's death, Epstein appeared to respond to Trump's claim that he had asked Epstein to resign from Mar-a-Lago. Epstein wrote, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. The White House has maintained that Trump barred Epstein for being a creep. Trump himself has said Epstein stole young women who worked at his Florida resort. Maxwell, meanwhile, denied recruiting anyone from Mar-a-Lago. While Trump has long denied any wrongdoing, he did file a libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over a report suggesting that a letter bearing his name was among gifts sent to Epstein for his 50th birthday back in 2003. A third email, dated December 15, 2015, shows Wolff warning Epstein that CNN planned to ask Trump about their relationship during a Republican primary debate that night. Epstein replied, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Wolff wrote back, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he denies knowing you, that gives you leverage. Or, if he defends you, you can use it later." Wolff has acknowledged interviewing Epstein, and the Daily Beast has reported that it obtained recordings of those conversations, in which Epstein allegedly described Trump as a close friend. Trump's team has called those accounts false smears. With Congress pressing for more disclosures and the Oversight Committee's investigation deepening, these new emails have reopened one of the most controversial chapters in recent U.S. political history, one that continues to blur the line between private correspondence and public accountability. For the latest updates on this developing story and more international coverage, stay tuned and subscribe to the Indian Express on YouTube.
The new Bearskin Hoodie 4.0 claims to be the most advanced, waterproof tactical hoodie ever made. But the real question is, does it work? This is the new Bearskin Hoodie 4.0, and it comes with its own rain jacket that zips into the hoodie for an additional 10,000 millimeters waterproof layer on the outside. The new
Today, President Donald Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein are back in the spotlight thanks to thousands of pages of emails released by both Republicans and Democrats in Congress. Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Oh boy, is the beginning of my 2 cents. So we're super damning emails, but I think that there are really interesting nuggets in here, like why were reporters looking to help Jeffrey Epstein? And whether Trump is involved or not, and there's a lot of evidence here, but I would say mainly in one direction, but there is one piece of counter evidence too that I want to make sure that you guys see. But whether he's involved or not, who organized this whole thing is the main question that I have. So let's give you all the details and then break down all the interesting parts that others might have missed.
Yeah, well, this morning, Democrats in the House Oversight Committee released a new batch of Epstein emails, and 3 of them are especially interesting. The first was an email that Epstein sent to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011. I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. In response, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated the unnamed victim referenced in these emails is the late Virginia Giuffre, who repeatedly said President Trump was not involved in any wrongdoing whatsoever and couldn't have been friendlier to her in their limited interactions. Now, here is the second email, which Epstein sent to journalist Michael Wolff in 2019. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member, ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Finally, here is an email exchange between Epstein and Wolff from 2015 when Trump was first running for president. Wolff, I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Epstein, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Wolff, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Now, Cenk, there are many, many more emails released by the Republicans later today, but what are your first thoughts on those 3 released by House Oversight Democrats?
I'm going to give you one more interaction that Epstein had with a reporter to give you the context for what I'm going to say about Michael Wolff. There's apparently a New York Times reporter, Landon Thomas Jr., who also tipped off Epstein in the emails saying, hey, someone's looking into finding out more about you and he might write a book and I'm giving you a heads up, etc. Why is a New York Times reporter coordinating with Jeffrey Epstein and giving him information to protect him? That is super weird. His name is, like I said, Landon Thomas Jr. He's no longer with the New York Times now. But that was pretty recent that happened. And then Michael Wolff, so-called intrepid journalist, going and strategizing with Epstein. Should we put a dagger in Trump's back or shouldn't we? How should we handle this? Who's we? Who the hell's we? What's going on here? This is super strange. And should we take out Trump now or should we use it as leverage against him later? Who the F is we? Why is Michael Wolff working with Epstein on this? And he's supposed to be like, tough journalist, and he's been charged with, not getting his facts right on attacks he's made against Donald Trump, etc. We stopped using him as a source because we thought he's unreliable. We're not going to quote a guy who's unreliable. And so that didn't have anything to do with politics. I'm against Trump, but he said things about Trump that didn't check out. I'm like, I'm done with him. And apparently we were right. So then Michael Wolff is asked about it today, and he gives an answer. And in his discussion about it, he keeps saying over and over again, now we see the real issue here, and the only question is, did Donald Trump know, was he involved in this plot? Why are you telling me that's the only question? Isn't it weird? Like, so, okay, brother, you are working with Epstein to cover up Epstein's crimes, even though you're a journalist. And now you come out and you go, aha, you see how it's definitely not me. Forget Epstein, forget anyone else organizing this. It's Donald Trump, which makes me think, wait, I guess it's not Donald Trump. Okay, so now look, guys, whether it's Donald Trump, I don't know. And if you say, hey, wait, Jake, how could you not know? But look at all this damning stuff, right? No question. There's tons of damning stuff here. And could Trump have done it? I mean, how many times did Trump talk about how much he likes young girls? Super awkward. Not just how he knows that Jeffrey Epstein likes young girls, but Trump would often comment to a very young girl, oh, you're going to be hot when you grow up. And comments about his own daughter, etc. And did Trump know that Epstein was doing something with young girls that was not right? Oh, of course he knew. He literally said, there's a quote of him saying, Jeffrey likes women as much as you, but he likes them on the younger side. You're saying it publicly, right? And here's a quote where Epstein said in the emails, the one that Jordan read to you a minute ago, of course he knew about the girls. That's Epstein saying, of course he knew about the girls. So wait, where's the part where I'm a little skeptical whether Trump did it? The very next thing, if you notice, was he said, of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Why did Trump ask Ghislaine Maxwell to stop? That's a good question, right? And so now, of course, Trump will say, and Trump's followers will say, oh, that's because he's the one guy who stood up to him. But when reporters asked Trump, he said, yeah, they were taking the girls from Mar-a-Lago. They were masseuses at Mar-a-Lago. I didn't like that. Oh, you idiot. Thank you for at least that confession, right? It would have been so easy to say, oh, I'm stopping the bad guy. But since he has verbal diarrhea, he just said what was actually in his mind, which is like, they were taking my young girls and moving them over to Epstein's, right? So, but to me, Jordan, like, whether Trump did it is, of course, super relevant. I get it, right? But what's much more relevant is who the hell organized this giant scheme in the middle of America to molest and rape American girls on video and make sure that you have super wealthy, super powerful men on tape committing this awful crime. And other than Drop Site News and us and a couple other outlets, I mean, mainstream media is preposterous. They're pretending like, oh, what do you mean? It was just Epstein and Maxwell. It couldn't possibly be anyone else. I'll get to Drop Site News and their incredible revelations in a second. But what do you think about all that?
Guys, got hair loss? I know what you're thinking. Should I shave my head? Comb it over? Wear a hat? Just stop. This is 1970. Keep your hair and your confidence because Bosley, America's #1 hair restoration experts, can give you your real hair back permanently. Check them out because they're giving away an absolutely free consultation and a free gift card to everyone who scans this QR code. Dude, you don't have to look like your dad because this isn't your dad's hair loss treatment. People all over the country trust Bosley because they're ahead of the curve. They use the latest technology to give you your real hair back. And the best part, Bosley's permanent solution is protected by the Bosley Guarantee. Let them show you for free how awesome your hair could look with an absolutely free consultation and a gift card for $250 off. Scan the QR code. Don't wait. Scan the code now and ask about the Bosley Guarantee.
now play.
My name's Sarah.
You can call me Bert. A girl's ambition.
I got a roll on my land.
It's a sign. I believe in signs. A corporation's greed.
I don't trust anything you say. You got eyes like a sneaky pig.
Experience an inspiring story.
They might have the money, but we have the dignity.
For the whole family.
I'll give you $20 an acre.
I ain't selling.
An 11-year-old girl booted you out of here. That must be so embarrassing.
Sarah's Oil. Inspired by a true story. Rated PG. Now playing in theaters.
I don't have a reason to doubt drop sites reporting. I guess. I've long maintained when you talk about, or you or anybody, Mossad's behind this. Yeah, could be. I want to see more reporting, more evidence. That's all. But I don't think it's worth it, for me anyway, speculating and then just running with it. So I'm not saying you were doing that, but I would like to see more reporting on that. Wouldn't surprise me at this point.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to Trump in a second. So I referenced it. Jordan just referenced this. Let me just explain. Drop Site News has 4 articles about Epstein's connections to Mossad. So Epstein, turns out, was way more powerful than I even realized. And so he was Ehud Barak, the former head of intelligence for Israel, former defense minister for Israel, former prime minister for Israel. Not only did he come and visit with Epstein 30 times, he's all over the emails. They're constantly communicating. Not only that, there was a guy who is a current Israeli intelligence operative that was also working with them and would run errands for Ehud Barak, and he'd worked with Barak for a long time, and then also doing things with Epstein. And then Barak would go to Epstein to help him with different international relationships, including with Vladimir Putin. And Epstein would then organize those meetings. Okay, first, stop right there. That means he has more power than the former Israeli prime minister. And the Israeli prime ministers are pretty much the most powerful people on earth. He had more power than them? Jesus. Okay? So then he organizes that deal, and what is it about? You see it in the emails, not just these newly released emails, but the ones that Drop Site News got. And that's Ryan Grimm, Jeremy Scahill, unimpeachable reporters, the best reporters in the country. And so it turns out that why they were trying to get in touch with Putin was because they wanted to topple Assad's regime. They wanted to say that he used chemical weapons, and they wanted it to be a red line, and they were insistent on red line, make sure everybody's talking about red line, so that if he crosses it, America has to go in and topple the Syrian government on behalf of Israel. And plus, they wanted America to attack Iran, yes, back then as well. And so Epstein is managing the relationships to make sure America does what Israel wants, which is war in Syria and Iran. Now, that is already amazing news, unbelievable news, and corroborated in their own emails. But what's extra amazing is what Jordan alluded to there. Mainstream media hasn't covered it at all. How could you not cover that story? That's unconscionable. Are you reporters or are you not reporters? No one can say that's not a giant story. That's as big a story as I've ever heard. Epstein is just a national story that will not stop under any circumstance. And we have evidence that Epstein is working with Israel to get America to go into these wars, and that's not relevant? No. He's working with an intelligence officer, that's Mossad. He's working with the former head of Mossad. He's working with the former prime minister of Israel. He, by the way, in his house, just in case it wasn't clear, giant map of Israel right in the middle, right? But mainstream media goes, shh. It's Trump. It's definitely Trump. It's only Trump. Don't look at anyone else, just Trump. No. I don't know if it's Trump, but I do know it ain't just Trump. I mean, I saw a news article today, preposterous, where they wrote, well, it could be Trump, and obviously the people who organized this are just Epstein and Maxwell. I mean, there's Prince Andrew as well, but Prince Andrew's, that's the only other person that was involved. Nah, that's not news. That's propaganda. And so, what the F is going on here? Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true. But it does keep you updated on our live shows.
Some of you work.
Downplaying these.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has chosen a prosecutor to investigate people and companies associated with Jeffrey Epstein, quickly obeying a public request from President Donald Trump. Bondi writes this, quote, "Thank you, Mr. President. SDNY U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton is one of the most capable and trusted prosecutors in the country, and I have asked him to take the lead," end quote. That in direct response to this announcement from President Trump, which came less than 4 hours before. The president wrote this, quote, "I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, JP Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions," end quote. That post, perhaps the clearest example of how the president is personally directing his administration's messaging when it comes to Epstein. Multiple sources telling CNN that Donald Trump himself dictates how and when the White House responds to Epstein-related developments as he tries to avoid anything that pushes the story forward. One source says this, quote, "Everybody has been instructed to wait until information comes out and then respond that it is a hoax or doesn't prove anything," end quote. All of this, just the latest instance of the president telling the nation's law enforcement who to target and his attempt to divert attention from his own relationship with Epstein. But it should come as no surprise.
You should focus on Clinton. You should focus on the president of Harvard, the former president of Harvard. You should focus on some of the hedge fund guys. I'll give you a list. These guys lived with Jeffrey Epstein. I sure as hell didn't.
All right, let's get off the sidelines, head into the arena. My panel is here. We're going to get started, though, with our reporters, CNN White House correspondent Kristen Holmes and our senior justice correspondent, Evan Perez. Kristen, let me start with you. There's been so much discussion this week about how the president himself, how the White House has been reacting to this story. And this is a lot of your new reporting on that. What else do we know?
Yeah, Casey, I mean, look, what I was told essentially is that there are allies and people around President Trump who have been telling him for months that he's getting bad advice, that he's not handling the Epstein case correctly, the controversy correctly. And we have learned that just in recent days, one of his allies on Capitol Hill told him the same, particularly when it comes to denying, deflecting, downplaying these quote-unquote Epstein files, that there's another strategy at play. And we certainly saw, whether or not this is why, President Trump shift the strategy here. Instead of just saying that this is a Democratic hoax, he is clearly trying to take control of the narrative and asking Pam Bondi, the Justice Department, to now investigate his political foes, particularly Democrats, many of whom were named in those emails that President Trump was also named in that were released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. One thing to keep clear here is that it's not as though the Southern District of New York hasn't already investigated Epstein's ties to various high-profile officials. They, at one point, have not only gone through that, but decided that there is not enough evidence to charge anyone else. So a lot of this is, or at least seems to be, performative, but it is a notable shift when it comes to how President Trump is addressing this. All of this, of course, coming as it's become clear to the White House, to the president himself, that bill that to release the Epstein files is likely to not only be brought to a vote, but pass in the House. And there are many who believe it will then go on to pass in the Senate, and that's the inevitable. Now you're seeing, again, President Trump kind of shifting his tactics from being defensive to being offensive.
Really fascinating. I mean, what do we know about who this prosecutor is that was just announced by the AG?
Well, Jay Clayton has a good reputation. He is the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. He's a former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And what this does, this instruction from the Attorney General, it does put him in sort of a bind, right? Because you can see that she screenshotted the president's announcement, his social media post, which clearly says that what he wants is an investigation of prominent Democrats. In other words, that's what Pam Bondi appears to be endorsing here. So the question for prosecutors in Manhattan will be whether they're going to do a fulsome look of everyone who is associated with Epstein. Now, a couple things have happened in the last few days that have really put this squarely back in the hands of the Justice Department. First of all, the Democrats surprised a lot of people with documents that they got from the Epstein estate that it's clear the Justice Department did not have. And so that put the Deputy Attorney General in a sort of an embarrassing position where he was tweeting at George Conway yesterday saying that the Epstein estate had hid documents from law enforcement. We got a pushback from the Epstein estate's attorney saying they did not hide anything. They simply responded to any requests for documents. So now the question is, will the Justice Department ask for these new documents, these documents that they did not already possess? And Casey, keep in mind, this summer, before they put out this the statement in July saying that there were no additional documents to be released, the Justice Department and FBI did go through everything they had and determined that there were no additional prosecutions that could be brought against anyone associated with Epstein. And so the question is whether this new investigation is going to yield a different answer. Also, one last thing. While they're doing this new investigation, you guys just talked about the discharge petition that is going on in the House right now. What this means is that there are no documents that the Justice Department is going to be able to turn over, because during an ongoing investigation, their practice is to not release documents that are subject of an investigation. So what that means is that we are now back into a holding pattern, right? They're not going to be able to release any new documents so long as that investigation is ongoing.
How convenient. Kristen Holmes, Perez, thank you both. Really appreciate your time today. All right, our panel's here in the arena. National political reporter for Axios, CNN political analyst Alex Thompson, CNN legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams, former DOJ director of public affairs Sochi Hinojosa, and Republican strategist Michael Singleton. They're both CNN political commentators. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here. Elliot, this is looks like a day for you.
Oh.
But actually, this point Evan just raised there is a really good and interesting one. Can you dig in a little bit to, whether they could be using it for this reason, right? Attempting to launch this investigation, basically to keep these documents from seeing the light of day.
That's plausible only because once something is an active investigation, obviously they can't be or shouldn't be released to the public. But let's step back and be clear. No matter who you voted for in America, no matter how much your support for Donald Trump may be, we should not normalize or get used to this idea of a president dictating investigations to a Justice Department. That is true whether it's a Democrat or Republican or anybody else. It is bonkers, bizarre, and a gross breach of every norm in the United States that the President of the United States is sending out social media posts directing the investigations into 20-year-old conduct at times of his political enemies. So that's sort of the big step. So whether there's something strategic about it within the Justice Department, or whether they're just throwing stuff at the wall to try to make this go away because it's a political crisis, we may not know.
If you're an American worker, why aren't you buying American-made workwear? It's 2025, and it's up. You're still buying imported workwear made from factories.
So you worked at Justice, and I think you were on this set fighting back and forth about a version of this very point, perhaps yesterday.
Yes.
But how would you look at the points Elliot's making?
Well, I think that's right. We never want a president to be dictating what investigations you should open or you should not open. I'll also note is you never start investigations based off of a political affiliation. So the fact that the president is naming off a number of Democrats, you don't do that. You investigate people based on the crime, and then if it leads you to a Democrat or Republican, then that might be the case. In this instance, obviously Donald Trump is one of the people that is mentioned. So they can't necessarily reopen an investigation and start looking at everything, because that potentially means looking into Donald Trump. What does that also mean? That means that they could potentially have to interview him. The last time we interviewed a president, as Alex remembers quite well, because he wrote an entire book on it, was Joe Biden. And there was audio. Then there was a whole fight about the audio, and there was a whole fight about the transcript. My guess is the Justice Department does not want to open this book. So they're trying to keep it very, very narrow. They have the president to fall back on, which is not right. You should never have a president dictate the investigation. But if they do open it, again, it could lead to potentially looking at Donald Trump. and I don't think they want that.
Yeah, Alex Thompson, what are you hearing from your sources about this? Because obviously Democrats have really seized on it. They weren't as focused on it, obviously, when Biden was in office. But it's not as though, there's a lot of, nobody's hands are clean.
No, and they definitely have drawn blood with Trump, and a lot of Republicans and people very close to Trump have said they're worried. Trump is known to be a man of many moods. And they're worried that, that once he gets in a funk, sometimes he stays in a funk for like months at a time, and he gets very frustrated. And clearly this investigation has incredibly frustrated him. But it's also to your other point that there are no clean hands. I mean, it is true that Larry Summers is in these emails and was one of the top economic officials in the country for the Obama administration. You had Obama-era lawyers, very much talking to him. And I think it really shows, broader than just the political impacts, is that people with power were willing to overlook a lot of what Jeffrey Epstein did if it meant having access to him and his wealth and his connections.
Trump has now been posting that he wants his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to start an inquiry into those people named in the Epstein email release, but he's named Democrats. He's named Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, who's a big Democrat donor. And no, he hasn't named any Republicans in his post.
Donald Trump has yet to reply to the BBC's apology for the Panorama edit of his January 6th speech. The corporation has rejected his call for $1 billion in compensation. Meanwhile, on Truth Social, President Trump has announced he will ask the Attorney General and the FBI to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's ties to many high-profile figures, including former President Bill Clinton. The documents released by the Democrats included emails to and from the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein that named Trump. He denies any wrongdoing. We're now joined by Hal Lambert, who's a former member of Trump's inaugural committee. Good afternoon, Hal.
Good afternoon, Kathy.
Thank you very much for joining us. Just first, starting on the BBC, I'll come to Epstein in a minute. But on the BBC, no response from Donald Trump. Do you think he'll still go ahead with that defamation lawsuit for $1 billion?
Well, I'm sure he's having his legal team look at it. And, I think if there's a case there, he probably does move forward with it because, he's done that here in the United States. And there's media outlets that are doing these things. And, the BBC apologized, but it was pretty obvious that they edited it to make him look like he said something that he didn't. And
well, he did say it later. He said it later in the speech, didn't he? But it was the splicing together that was the problem, wasn't it?
Yeah, because when you splice them together, you don't have it in the context in which it was said. And it just it's one of those things where this happens over and over again to not just to President Trump, but to many Republicans. And the media, as we all know, is mostly in the left camp in the Democrat Party in the United States, and they're doing it to help their team. And this happens all the time. They did it in the United States over and over again. And it certainly happens on a global scale too.
Well, as you know, there are impartiality rules that BBC journalists are obliged to sign up to, and Ofcom, the broadcasting watchdog, administers those. I wanted to come back to what you said about if there was a case for Donald Trump to sue, because that is, the $1 billion question, isn't it? Because the BBC has apologised profusely. The programme is not being shown again. It wasn't shown in the US in the first place, and he was elected soon after Donald Trump was. So doesn't that show that no harm was done to his reputation?
Well, I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, there's always harm. I mean, you're trying to, as the United States president, you're working with international leaders. You're trying to bring them on board. You're trying to bring and to bring those leaders on board. A lot of times, their constituents, their people in their countries want to have a positive view of what you're trying to do, or you need them to have one. And if you're splicing and doing things to create a negative view of that person within a country, it hurts global diplomatic relations, quite frankly. And so I don't know that there's no damage. Like I said, this is probably an international law question as well. So it gets very complicated. But like I said, I think the attorneys will look at it and then they'll decide.
Well, whether or not that there is a case and that he would likely win such a case, what good would it do if British taxpayers were paying out to a man who is already very wealthy to the tune of $1 billion?
Well, it might cause the media around the world to have some impartiality and actually have people on their staff that are part of both political parties. How many people at the BBC are members of the Tory party? Right?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do know,
probably none.
No, that's definitely not the case. I mean, there's a signed-up Conservative member on the board of the BBC, for starters, and there is quite a lot of speculation that he's been sort of stirring the pot on this. But I mean, what I do know is that the broadcasting watchdog Ofcom can fine the BBC or take its license away over breaches of impartiality. So there's a pretty rigorous system to keep the broadcaster on the right lines, isn't there?
Well, if the watchdog and everybody involved is on one political side, I just don't think that it's impartial.
The watchdog is not political. It is an apolitical institution.
Individuals have to be, if they're on a watchdog committee, most of the time individuals are political. And can they set their political views aside? Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't.
Well, let's move on to the other story that is making huge waves your side of the pond, and that is the Jeffrey Epstein saga. I just wonder if the president is so sure that these Epstein emails are a hoax, as he puts it, why won't he take questions from reporters on it?
It just fuels this story, and I've looked at what was released, and the whole story is, Trump was discussed in Epstein emails. Well, guess what? President Trump was running in 2016 when some of these emails came out. He was president during some of these emails. He was on everybody's radar. He was in everybody's emails. He was on everybody's thoughts. He was on every newscast. So, the fact that Epstein was emailing about Trump is not surprising. And all of it was negative towards Trump. So Epstein clearly didn't like him. And he was conspiring with reporters and others to figure out a way to create problems for Trump. In fact, there's emails in there where he was asked when President Trump was president that he was going to, give some information to the Russians on how to deal with him. I mean, Epstein was not a good guy, as we know. And
clearly, but so there's nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear, and Donald Trump has nothing to fear if the files are released next week.
Yeah, I don't believe he does. I mean, let's
why did he just say, bring it on, like the Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene has said? Just let these files out.
It's a good question. Perhaps, let's put it this way. If there was anything massively damaging towards President Trump, the Democrats would have released it. I mean, they did everything they could to stop him from being reelected. They put him in jail. They indicted him 3 times. I mean, they were going nonstop. You think they would have held back on some Epstein information? They wouldn't have.
Right. So would you say release those files?
I'd be fine if they were released. I suspect that maybe one of the reasons they aren't released is because there's some potential intelligence information in there that they don't want to be out there, that they discovered. That would be my guess. You could always kind of try to redact it, but you just never know what's in there that could be embarrassing for allies or others. That's perhaps the reason. So we just don't know, but there's clearly a reason, and I don't believe that reason has anything to do with something embarrassing to President Trump. As you notice, in these emails that have been released, there's no communication with President Trump, whether text or email. There's none. These are all just about him to others. And most of it, like I said, is ways to sabotage President Trump in general.
It's interesting because, you seem to be taking the position of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who says she doesn't understand Donald Trump's pushback against releasing these files. So why do you think it is that only 4 Republicans have signed that petition calling for a vote then? I mean, you talk about intelligence concerns, but is there a point perhaps that there's a split now in the MAGA movement that, might end up being quite destabilizing for Donald Trump?
Well, the reason I say it is because I think when you have both parties, the Democrats didn't release it when they had it for 4 years, and it hasn't been released now. It seems to me that would lead me to believe it's an intelligence issue, and that's why they're not wanting to release it in general. So those that call for it, and again, I would say I'm fine with it, but only to the extent that it doesn't disrupt some sort of intelligence information and intelligence agents that we maybe have in the field. I don't want that to happen. So I can't speak to it because I don't know what's in it. I think the people that know what's in that report should be the ones that should be commenting on whether it should be released or not.
Are you concerned that the MAGA movement seems to be sort of fracturing somewhat? Does that bother you?
I think there's other things that the MAGA movement's more focused on than the Epstein files.
When my streaming bill hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch, I didn't get mad.
So, Mayor-elect Mamdani says he's going to call the White House. Roll the tape.
Do you plan to call President Trump?
I will be reaching out to the White House and as we prepare to actually take office, because this is a relationship that will be critical to the success of the
So it
state.
wasn't just a hypothetical scenario on our debate stage. You're actually going to call him. What will you say?
Well, I'll say that I'm here to work for the benefit of everyone that calls the city home.
I don't know if President Trump's going to take that call. I hope he does. I think it's the right thing to do. Mamdani is the mayor of the nation's largest and most important city. But I don't know if he will or not. We'll follow that story. Now, the reason Mamdani has to call Trump, and he's got to be nice, can't be disrespectful, can't be arrogant, none of that, is because the federal government in 2026, the upcoming fiscal year that we're in now, because the fiscal year of the federal government starts in October, has earmarked $7.4 billion in federal funding to New York City. $7.4 billion from the feds. That's 6.5% of the total spending. 6.5%. Where does it go? Department of Education, Department of Housing, Children's Services, temporary assistance for the poor, some homeless stuff, but not a lot. So the money is coming in. Now, if Mamdani disregards the Constitution, for example, or promotes anarchy by harming the New York City police, and he's threatened to do that by cutting $1 billion from the budget, Trump's going to stop that money. Now, that'll cause lawsuits and angst. The progressives in Congress will jump up and down. But you know President Trump. Mamdani steps out of line. If there's any trouble at all, ICE agents are attacked in New York City, anything like that, that money's going to stop. And the city will go down even faster. So Mamdani has to reach out. Boy, do I hate that cliche. Oh, jeez. To the President of the United States and try to say, look, I'm not as crazy as you think I might be. I really want to work together for the benefit of all. If he puts it that way, maybe Trump will give him a chance. I don't know. Okay? But there comes a point where Zoran Mamdani is going to have to grasp the reality. You heard Governor Hochul said, we don't have the money to give you 4 free buses. So free buses is gone already. Already gone. Not going to have free buses. Because Mamdani doesn't have the money. I think it's $800 million a year that would cost. And the state of New York doesn't have the money to give him. Because both the city and the state are in massive debt. Because they spend so much on entitlements. And union contracts and on, you know the drill. Now, we have other things that are in play, free childcare. That's not going to happen. That's more expensive than the free buses. Now, Hochul says, well, I had some money for that, but wait till you see. So Mamdani wrote in on free. And I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing a lot of this. Final point. One of his hallmarks, the new mayor, is that he doesn't want to send the cops into potential criminal situations like domestic disturbances. Well, if you know anything about the police, you know that some of the most dangerous encounters are domestic calls. Because you don't know what you're getting. You don't know if there's weapons in the house. You don't know how irrational the people are. Mamdani is going to send in social workers without knowing what kind of danger lies behind the door. unarmed social workers are going to go in there? No, it's not happening. Not going to happen. And it's my job to point out reality to Zoran Mandani, and I will continue to do that. American homeowners, the FBI has been warning all of us about a type of real estate fraud called title theft. They target your equity. With just a forged signature, ownership can be transferred out of your name, and without protection in place, you are facing an emotional and financial nightmare. That's why I partner up with Home Title Lock. You can find out today if you are already a victim and protect yourself. Use promo code BILL at HometitleLock.com.
Yeah, shout out to Bill O'Reilly. All right, guys. Thanks for